My name's Kyle. Thank you all very much for coming out. My topic is SQL things you should know. First thing I want to do is talk a little about the presentation. I'm covering a smattering of SQL-related topics. It's a little bit of everything. Mostly it's tips and tricks, things that I find useful in my job. I'm a senior support specialist, sorry. So I answer a lot of questions that you guys have and sort of found that there's a lot of things that I don't think you as a group are taking advantage of that you should be. So hopefully we'll learn a whole bunch of stuff today. I know I did. I will be entertaining questions throughout, mostly for clarifications and things I can answer quickly. If there's going to be something longer, I'll probably hold it to the end. And if you do have questions at the end, we are going to ask that you come to the microphone. For the quick ones, you can stay in your seat and I'll repeat it. I also want to specify and make very clear this is not a performance presentation. A lot of the stuff you come to see that's SQL related is performance related. This one is not. But with that said, this is the most important thing I can tell you guys. It's so important I actually figured out how to do this Zoomy thing on PowerPoint. I spent time of my life to emphasize how important this is. It's actually 3 times? Okay. So every performance problem that you're starting with, the first question I'm going to ask you is if you ran TuneTable. And if the answer is no, we're going to have a real hard time going forward. So if you haven't run TuneTable, run TuneTable. Make sure you're shipping with TuneTable values when you ship your code to your customers. Most important thing. Now, about me. Because of these reasons, I'm occasionally very hard to understand. And I'm sorry. If you don't understand me, just wave me down. I'll repeat myself. It's okay. And if you're saying to yourself right now that you don't hear my accent, I do have it. You can find me at the casino event tonight, and I'll tell you exactly where you can park your car. All right. Major topics I'm going to cover. First one I'm going to cover is migration. That is getting your customers to InterSystems data platforms products. I also am going to mention now that everything that I'm covering today is applicable to Cache, Ensemble, HealthShare, TrackCare, and InterSystems Iris data platform. I'm going to do some demos. They're all going to be on Cache, but they are all applicable. So first, migration. Second, we're going to talk a little about upgrades. Upgrades is upgrading either to InterSystems Iris or just upgrading your Cache or Ensemble. Causes some people some headaches. I want to talk about some common problems, some common solutions, things to look out for. And last, I'm going to talk about ways to leverage SQL for your new applications, which you're excited about now, and the old applications which you've written and are hopefully still excited about today. So let's hop into it. Step 1 to migrating your tables from wherever they are into InterSystems products is to connect to the database. You do that by using the SQL Gateway. Hopefully you guys have done this. The form looks like this. These are recommendations. ODBC is easy on Windows because Windows ships with the driver manager. That's easy to use. On Linux and Unix, it doesn't. Any Unix or Linux admin, worth $5 can set that up. It's not hard. And it's not hard doing JDBC on Windows. This is just the easier setup things to do. You can't run any of this stuff on VMS, and that is way outside the topic of this talk. So that's any questions on that, you can talk to me afterwards. So setting up the SQL Gateway connection is pretty easy. You fill in this form, and for the website, you connect. Typical problems that I see here, this delimited identifiers box here, that causes problems, I think, with MySQL. But if you're having problems running queries, that is, your connection works fine. You start running queries and they're not returning and you're getting errors, check that box, run the query again, or uncheck it, whatever you have. Just kind of toggle that. That fixes a lot of the problems that I see. A lot of people who try to use JDBC for their connections have trouble getting getting Java in the path environment variable for their cache processes. Another thing that setting up isn't hard. It's one of those gotcha things where if you're in a terminal, especially in Linux, and you see Java in your path there, It's not always in the path for the cache processes environment. And the credentials thing, I mean, you can laugh, but that happens all the time, right? Just double, triple check that. Because if you call me and it's just credentials, everyone feels bad about it. But I don't mind. All right, so let's talk about getting data from where it is into InterSystems products. A lot of people I know use the data migration wizard to do this. It's a great tool. It does work. But I want to talk about a tool that I don't think enough people know about, which is this system SQL query for table. What this does is it takes two parameters, a query and a table name. It takes the results from the query, creates a new table, and populates that table with data from the results of that query. So it'd be perfectly if this gets you if we did this, I would get a brand new table called SQLtips.person from my linked.person table. I like the flexibility of this because it allows you not only to bring the data over, but to potentially change the structure of your data. If you have your relational structures in another database and you want to change them, you can do it on the fly, really easy here. Split one table into two, combine tables. This is just a this can be any query. This one's simple, so I could fit it on one line in the presentation, but it could be as complicated as most of you guys can dream up. Not you. There are a few drawbacks. We don't do what I'm going to call relational integrity. That is, if you have foreign keys, those don't make it over. And we don't put indexes in. So you'd have to do that later. But I'm going to argue that's a good thing in a little bit. So that's if you can make new tables. But I know a lot of you guys, you've already have your relational structures built up, and you need to put your data in tables that exist. You do need to write code to do that, but it's easy. Right? You need two statements, one select to get your data out, one insert to put the data in. The recommendation I do make for this is to use %no walk, %no index, %no check, maybe %no trigger. These are extensions that we have added to the SQL language. Anything with a % that you run into will be an extension, and I'm going to talk about extensions a little bit later. So what this will do is will prevent locking, indexing, and triggers from running in order to be able to ingest the data faster. You do want to make sure no one's on the system, because you're not locking. And you're not updating indexes, so people are trying to read these tables, they might get the wrong results. This is for, a no one on the system, you're getting the data in for the first time thing. And, no check doesn't check the data on the way in. So that's we won't do data type checking, which is, now you have to know your data's good already, but typically that's, if it's in a table already, it's been checked on the way into that table, so you're usually safe bringing it in. But of course, be careful. This is for speed. And to get speed, we take out, checks and safety. You got to pay for it some way. Building indexes after a batch load of data is faster than indexing it at the same time. Now that has to do with sequential writes and cache data block splits and other stuff that's outside the scope here, but if you want to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to. Again, afterwards. So now that I'm talking about building indexes, I need to go into index building steps. You don't have to memorize this, you don't have to write this down. This presentation will be posted. Just know you saw it and know you can refer to it. So step one of this is to use system SQL setmap selectability. What this does is turns off an index for select queries. So any inserts, updates, and deletes will update this, in this case, an SSN index, but select queries won't use it. You actually you run this statement before you add the index to your class. Right? You can run this on an index that doesn't exist yet. So you turn off the index, and then you add it to your class, and compile, obviously. 3, you build your index using %build indices. The parameters here, The first one is a list build with your index names. If you leave that blank, we build all of them. The second one is purge. Purge, which will, if you're fixing an index, you would want to delete it. But since we're making a new one, we don't need to kill anything. The third one here, the 2 is locking. 2 locks row by row. So it will lock a row, build the index for it, and then unlock it. And the last one is journaling, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Step 4, you turn the index back on. Set map selectability with the third parameter as a 1 instead of a 0. And then you have to purge your cache queries. And hopefully you all know how to do that, but in case you don't, System SQL purge. And you can also do that through the management portal. You'll notice all my steps are terminal steps. I'm more of a terminal guy than a portal guy. I don't know why. All right. So I said I was going to talk about that 4th parameter that was a question mark. That is for journaling. If you are not mirroring, you do not have to have that flag on. Journaling is for disaster recovery. Something goes wrong, someone pulls the plug on you, hits your server with a sledgehammer. I don't know what struggles you guys have. But if something goes wrong in the index building process and you have to recover from it, you're just going to build the whole index again. So there's kind of no reason you have to journal there. But if you have a mirror, you need that index to get to your mirror, so you have to journal. So for these notes here at the bottom, if the system isn't live, you're doing your first load of the data, you don't have to turn the index off. No one's on the system. No one's in trouble. And if you're fixing an index because something went wrong and you have to rebuild the index, you just have to add an extra purge in there. All these steps are perfectly great for 15.2 and above. 15.2 and earlier, things are a little bit different. Some of these calls don't exist. So if you're on anything earlier and you run into something and you want to talk about index building strategies, just call. Call, email, open a ticket with support. We'd love to help you guys. Me personally, I would. All right. So that's what I got from migrations. Any questions for right now? You guys are really tired from having sat in presentations all day? You're gonna make me go all the way back? I have to look at how many clicks I have to do. Jesus. All right. I can't find it. There it is. So he's asking, can we do select into? Select into does not work for a table that is remote and a table that is local. That's called a heterogeneous query. So if you have something remote and something local, you can't mix them quite like that. Which is why, for this, you have to write 2 statements. You have to write one that gets the data and one that puts the data in. But it's not hard. You're going to write that. You're going to write that in a routine anyway. I would think. Anything else? Will I flip back all the way to the next? Any of your questions about my first slide? I'm going to be sad. All right. Excellent. You guys are doing great. You're a great audience. All right. Some more about upgrades. I'm going to talk about just 2 kind of quick things that go wrong-ish when upgrades happen. The first one, and this has been something that people have run into, is outlier selectivity. Outlier selectivity is a great piece of technology we added to the product, and I think it didn't get the attention it needed when we released it, and it's caused a couple people some problems during upgrades. So an outlier, let's go with this example. If you are running, say, a hospital here in Palm Springs, and you have your table of patients, and you have their information, where they live, how old they are, all that stuff. One of the things you'll have is their state, what state they live in. And if you're a hospital here in Palm Springs, about 95 to 99% of your patients live in California. Hospitals serve local people. So before 14.1, before we added support for outlier selectivity, when you ran tune table and look, I'm sorry, do you guys all know what tune table is? Yeah. I'm going to explain it anyway, just in case someone's being shy. Tune table is something you run that characterizes the data of your table and makes it available to the optimizer. So it's what allows the optimizer to make good decisions. So when you ran tune table before we added support for this, it would look at your state column and say, you know, all the people are from California. This has a high selectivity that we expect to get a lot of data back when we ask about, you know, column equals some value. We added support for outliers. When tune table, we would look through the table and say, oh, all the people are from California. This is actually really selective when you don't want people from California. And so it makes that selectivity number low. So it becomes it would be a really attractive index for the optimizer to use. So this caused people problems because the selectivity's changed and their query plans changed. So you have to know this is happening to you. You have to check if you make the upgrade, you know, over 14.1, you have to kind of check your selectivities and make sure this is happening. And the way you work around that is you put parentheses around the value. So in this case, I use 2 sets of parentheses. I do that for clarity. I feel like one set of parentheses is something that I do just sometimes to get order of operations right, and I overdo it. I very overdo it. So I think double parentheses gives it a sense of purpose, that you're doing something for a reason. So you do need to do test tuning. Hopefully you have a set of data that is representative for, I'd say go with your biggest customer, or at least some customer. And you have to check to see if you're going to hit this. It's not hard to check. If you look at the tune table values, you'll see outlier selectivity. Right? It's a little bit obvious, but you have to know.
So are you saying that the double parens are actually doing something other than just highlighting?
All right, his question is, are the double parens actually doing something? So one set of parentheses gets the job done. The extra set is something I do stylistically. So what the parentheses around, in this case, California is doing is sending that value to the optimizer. So the optimizer can check this value against the outlier value, and if they're the same, it knows the index is bad. You know, inefficient for that query. And so likely wouldn't use it. All right. So now here's, you see I have Hangup in quotes here because this is actually, I think, a really good part of our product and something that's fairly new. If you go to the Optimizing SQL Queries talk, that's given by Harry Tong, he's going to talk about frozen plans a lot, but I want to touch on them a little bit because I think they're important. Once you get to 16.2, upgrades from 16.2 and onwards, you will not ever, mostly ever, run into performance problems post upgrades. What happens is, when you go to upgrade, our SQL engine will freeze all your query plans. So once you upgrade, you get the same plan you had the version before. Now this only starts when you get on 16.2. If you upgrade to 16.2, this technology doesn't help you yet. But from 16.2 on, you will get nice, clean, easy, performance, degradation-free upgrades. So what's the problem, right? The problem is, you know, some of our SQL developers are always putting in new optimizations, making our product faster, new heuristics, and you want to get that stuff. So now, in order to take advantage of new optimizations, you have to intervene. So you will need to test some queries. Another extension here, %NoF plan, will prevent you from using a frozen plan if one exists. And you have to look through your queries. The ones you probably want to test are your high-impact ones. Theoretically, you know what those are. But if not, you can look at the statements page in the SQL part of the management portal, and you can see some of those.
So you're saying they're no longer purged on after X number
No longer purged after, he's saying that they're no longer purged after X number of days. What's no longer purged after X number of days? Dynamic queries was the answer there. Dynamic queries and SQL statements are different. We have our cache queries, which is the code we run to execute your queries to get you your data. But a SQL statement is different. A SQL statement is your query. It is the plan we use to execute it and whether or not it's frozen. It's a new structure we added in 16.2, which allows you to really just be able to freeze plans. You can also import and export them. So if you have a system that has great query plans, you can actually export them from there and move it to another system. Frozen plans are great. Go to Optimizing SQL Queries, and Harry will talk more about it. Or come find me ever. I'm happy to gush about it. It's a great technology. Yes?
You said after 2016.2,
Mm-hmm.
when you upgrade, the default is that it will freeze the plan and use the plan from the previous version.
Yes.
Is there a way, but now I do not know if the new plan is giving me any advantage or not.
OK, that's a great question. So by default, we do freeze plans on upgrades. And his question was, we don't know whether the new plan will give you an advantage or not. Correct. You have to test.
How do I go back to the previous plan?
How do you go back to the old one? Don't. Test it first, and don't unfreeze it. No, for the most query plans actually don't change on upgrades. Most queries are either are simple or have a clear best plan. For the ones that will change, you can test them. So if you test them with %NoF plan, you don't use the save frozen plan, but that doesn't change the frozen plan. That must be your confusion, right? All right, I'm sorry. That's, oh, crap. Yeah, that's my fault. That's my fault. I'm sorry. All right. Any other questions on that? Excellent. Excellent. So let me talk about this section for a second. Now I'm going to talk about bringing your applications, old and new, into the SQL world if you can. This is important because SQL is still the third most used language in computer science, behind Java and JavaScript. So a lot of people know SQL, a lot of people use SQL, and there's a lot of power to be had in our implementation of SQL. I'm gonna show off a handful of things here. So problem number one, string manipulation. SQL was not written with powerful string manipulation. You have some functions here, but it doesn't do a lot, and it's not what SQL is for, by the way. So if you had a string like this is my real name. If you want to dox me on the internet, you can find out who I am. How would you pull my middle name out? Does anyone actually know a good way to do this? Sorry? Oh, of course you know. Yes. So I talked a little about extensions earlier. We support a lot of object script expressions in SQL, like $piece. Yes, sir? Oh my God, yes, right there. There's a docs. Great question. It's always a good question when all I have to do is click 3 times for an answer. So here are some of the other ones. These are some of the string manipulation ones. There are other extensions we have. You can find them here. Again, this will be posted. If you want to search for it in the docs, the search term is SQL functions, and I believe it's the top head. So yeah, this is when possible, you should try to use standard SQL, but to do this without $piece is a pain. I looked into it for about 5 minutes and decided I would never do it that way. So $piece makes this nice and easy and clear. So you get to leverage your object script knowledge in SQL too. Now, I can kind of read you guys' minds a little bit, right? And I read it a month ago when I wrote the slide. Is you want more than that, right? Because the extensions are great, and they are. They can do a lot for you, but they can't do everything. And when I talk about string manipulation, people are like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not good enough. And I know you guys have written great applications. I've read some of your code. You guys have done some awesome stuff. And you want to be able to use that in the SQL world, I would think. So I'm going to show you here how to expose the code you've written to SQL. And because every time I talk about string manipulation, eventually comes down to regex, so I'm going to show you guys how to write a regex matcher in SQL. So now I'm going to do the very difficult thing of sitting down and trying to swap to where that is. Nope. Oh, nothing is anywhere. All right. So this has definitely changed my settings. Can you guys read this? Wonderful. All right. So first thing I want to show you actually is the SQL shell. This is a way to be able to write queries from the terminal. I said earlier I was a terminal guy. I am. And I like using the SQL shell, and it just seems like something not enough people do. To get to the SQL shell, do $system.sql.shell. And now you can run queries, such as select name from person. This lets you check your query history by using the hash or pound sign. So you can see these are some queries I'm going to be running in the future, because I wanted to have them saved before I got here. And if I wanted to rerun one of them, you can use pound, say 1, and I'll select from SQL tips.person. And it works just like that. Other things you can do, if you wanted to run a cost expression from here, an object script expression, you can use COS to bump out to the regular terminal and run your expression, something like write $CV to get your version string. Coincidentally, quick aside, anytime you guys open an issue with support, just throw the version string in. It makes us a little bit happier as a group. So, all right, aside done, back on. Something else you can do with this, so I have sample.person linked here in user. I'm going to go name DOB from, oh, by the way, SQL isn't case sensitive, so I'm going to be typing these all in lowercase to kind of get through them. Yeah, fact. So here are the names and the dates of births for people in my table and samples. But when I read this, I don't know what these dates are. These are in $H format, and I don't know what 36120 means. So you can change that by doing set select mode equals, and I'm going to use ODBC, and this will change the way the data is returned. And now it's in ODBC mode. The only correct mode for dates, by the way. Anyone challenge me on that? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's two reasons. One, it sorts, and two, Europeans and Americans agree with what date it is. All right, so that's the SQL shell. I'm going to be doing the rest of the demo with the SQL shell. And I promised you a regex matcher, so let me call that up. I am using Atelier here. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to play with it so far. If not, I recommend it. It is really good. So I'm teasing you a little. Here's a regex matcher at the bottom, and here's the code for it. So totally set you up. You didn't think it'd be easy. It is. So I'm kind of cheating, right? $match is just something that we have that supports regex expressions. So, I mean, if I've got to be mic'd, I'm going to be mic'd. All right, so using this is actually really easy. Now, I have to copy this because it took me 20 minutes to come up with a regex expression. Not one of my strong suits, but I have it here. All this regex expression here does is get people from the person table whose first letter of their first name is K. And look at all those Ks. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm calling the regex function. Could have done it with a what? Oh yeah, I could have used $piece, $extract. It would have been easier. You're absolutely right. This is a bit of a clunky solution, but I'm going to get to why in a minute. So if you guys didn't hear, yeah, $piece, $extract gets us done like that. But it's a regex matcher. It does cooler things in theory. So what I've done is I'm calling this the regex function here, and I'm passing in the name. This is one of the columns from my table, my regex expression, and when that evaluates to 1, I want to return the row. So this is, and I want to make clear that, I mean, you know, again, I used $match, I kind of cheat here, but this can be any code you want. This can be any of the algorithms you guys have invented, come up with, anything you've written to help customers. You can expose to SQL by doing something this simple. Wrapping it in a class method, using the SQL proc tag, and putting it in your queries. Now, I'm sorry? Okay, ghosts, awesome. All right, so now that I've shown you how to write a regex matcher, I want to tell you, you don't ever need to write a regex matcher. We have something that does that. I'm going to gush about iFind for a second, because I think this thing's super cool, and I think nowhere near enough people use this thing. iFind is really, really powerful free text search. It does these things. It does more. If you're familiar with INO, it can search for INO entities. Seriously, if you have a free text field in a table and you're not at least looking at iFind, you're doing yourself a disservice. Oh, I've lost the back of this. All right, the battery's going to go out on this guy. Sorry, I'm a menace. One quick story. I showed a customer named Joe who's around here how an iFind index. He was trying to do some free text search. He was using contains, and it was okay. So I said, use iFind. We threw an iFind index on it. It was able to search his table, million rows, 70 global references. It came back so fast, he told me he didn't think that the results were right. We had to run it again without the index. iFind's really good. Please give it a try. Please give it a try. And if you have questions, please ask me. All right, I think that's probably enough gushing about iFind, but so give it a shot. Oh, God, I'm so losing these batteries. All right, so if you, I've talked a lot about the algorithms and the code you guys have already written, and you know, you have routines and you have code, and you want to be able to use them. I showed you one way, but you know, you'll have code that brings data in from different globals in ways that's, you know, maybe a little bizarre. That's the easiest thing to do is to write object script. And I know I've talked to some of you guys where we're talking query performance, and you say, it'd be easy if you could just do this, 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 this. And you want to be able to just use that, but in a SQL context. So the way you can do this is with table-valued functions. They're pretty easy to write. They support just select. You can't update a function. That doesn't have a lot of meaning. But it allows you to write your, I don't know what I've done to this poor thing. It allows you to take the code you've written and leverage it in a new way. So, all right, this is another demo part. So watch as our thing goes wild. Yeah. All right. Okay, so here is something that you might already have. So this is what I typically call a user-written query, where you provide the code to return data. I'm calling this method getResults. GetResults look like this. I'm sure you all have seen code like this, where you read it, and I can see some of you trying to understand it. It's supposed to be dumb, it says it in the comment. It's supposed to be weird. I'm actually proud of how bad this is. But the life cycle of code today, everywhere, is you write the code, you test the code, you give it to your users, they use it in ways you never asked them to, so you fix all the bugs, and eventually it's rock solid, you wrap it in an API, and no one looks at it again. So we have this routine, and it's rock solid, it does its job. So this is something you might have written already that you could call with dynamic SQL to get the data from the globals that I'm calling with indirection and stuff. So now, as opposed to using dynamic SQL, you can also do something like this. SQL tips dot global data. And this will bring down results from those globals. You can use this in a way, you can use this with joins too. You can, I can do this. Where age less than 33, say. You know, I could write tons of queries using joins and group bys, and that all works. This works just like a table. But is a function that's calling object script code that was written you might not even know when. So it's a new way to be able to call something like this. So the idea here being this might be something you've already written. Now, there is a second way to do this now. I want to stay sitting. I'm going to show you the second way. The second way is more powerful. It's more flexible. I'm going to be perfectly honest. When I tried to write with it, I had that concern that the new way is actually going to be harder than the old way because I'm really used to the old way, and the new way is new. Not true. New way is easier. It's better. It's faster. Watch this. Probably watch this. Oh, God. Where is everything? All right. The new way, which is in my class, new way. Oh, God, I'm sorry. You guys can all read this, right? All right. At any point, if something comes up that you can't read, I have to know because I can't see that really well. I tried to make this huge, but still, fit stuff on the screen. All right. So first thing you have to do is you have to extend SQL.customQuery. The properties you define here are going to be the properties that are returned when you query this. I also have this private property here where I'm going to store my results. This is a very typical way to write something like this. So what I do is I call my getResults. I put the results that come back by reference in the second parameter. I don't remember why I did that. Into my results private property. And that gets everything set up and ready to go. The fetch cursor is going to go through the results, and all it's doing is setting up the properties. I'm using ID in kind of two ways here. It's both my iterator, that is, that keeps track of where I am, but it's also a result I'm returning. In the close cursor, you do general cleanup. In this case, I wouldn't have to do anything, but I did something to kind of make it clear. So I can call this code in the same way I called the other one, and it also works. I really like this way to write your own queries because it's natural within the object paradigm. If you're used to writing classes at all, this all just feels really, really natural and easy. So I want to show one more example of this, which should be this. So this example is one written by, I think, Dan? Dan, did you write this? Well, we'll find out. This is an example that's in the document. Dan says we should see if it works first. It does. I tested it. So this is an example of being able to search a JSON string, a JSON array specifically. The code is, if you look for %SQL.customQuery, this code is there. I'm showing this off because this is it's a good example of how this gets done. You can see the source data and the iterator private properties. And this will do is this pulls out specifically names and cities from JSON objects within a JSON array that you give it. So to illustrate this, I hopefully have that. I do. So you can see I'm going to run 4 now. That has the JSON string in it. Oh yeah, so I'm using another InterSystems extension where I'm using the contains operator as a way to show that off, and returning one thing out of a JSON string. So the example is good, and it allows you to do something like query a JSON string in a very simple and straightforward way. Any questions about that? I know I went through it a little bit quick, but I can also see my timer up here, and I'm running a little bit low. Yeah?
Are you going to have examples of this to download? Like,
Oh, yeah, this code will all be posted up. And if at any point you can't find it, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to give it to you. And this one specifically is already in the documentation.
Carl, was it 16.2 on?
16.2, this is 17.2. Oh, 16.2 for the JSON stuff?
No, for the custom query.
Custom query, 17.2, 18.1, Dan? 17.2, I'm on.
It actually predates 17.2, but we just fixed a couple of bugs in it that prevented it from being as seamless as it is now.
Okay. So I'm using 17.2. You know, you can.
And from an order of precedence, from an optimizer perspective, does it get kept in last when you do a join?
Does it get kicked in? So from an optimizer perspective, does it get pulled in last when you do a join? I do not know. We can follow that up? All right. Well, I mean, so there's other InterSystems people here. If they have the answer, we'll take it now. But yeah, let's, Trevor, come either tonight or tomorrow in the tech exchange. Anybody else? All right, I got to move along here. All right. Oh, good. Bad. Good? All right. I'm not going to touch that anymore. So now, here's a problem that this is my last example. This is a problem that I see from time to time. You have a query like this, and you have restrictions like this. Typically, you'll see that the string of numbers that you want your ID to be in is passed as one gigantic string, and you have to use embedded SQL because someone says so. And you have to deal with the situation. So you don't have a good way to do it. I can't give you too much time because we're running out of time. So I didn't talk about it, but I said remember this thing for later, and that is using list from string. So you can use %inList and list from string to take a string, make it a list, and then use %inList. Something else, our optimizer also knows how to deal with this very cleanly. So we don't do something like loop through the whole table. We will figure out, we can just pull out a few things. I'll prove it to you, Trevor. I'll do it. All right? So this actually gives better performance than in does. It allows you to deal with it in embedded SQL, really easy to write, and a great way to use our extensions, which is the thing that's tied this whole thing together. It's what I started with, and it's what I end with. So, in closing, as I'm really tucking this thing in tight, we talked a little about bringing your SQL stuff into cache data platform, InterSystems data platforms. We talked about upgrading a little more cleanly, and we talked about a few ways to leverage what you have and bring it into the SQL world. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I really love coming here. I love talking to you guys. If you guys have any questions, I will take them in my last minute. And if not, I will be very happy to talk to you guys at the casino night or tomorrow at the tech exchange or anytime you guys call me in support. I'm available. I love helping you guys, love taking your questions. Can I have any right now? Yes? A link to these slides are going to be posted. Well, my slides are already posted on the app.
This version's in the app, and after the conference, will be posted on the website through the Learning Services.
Yeah, the Learning Services website is going to have all these, and I'll have my code up there and anything else you could want. It is in the app, yes.
You mentioned that no trigger can count. So if a table which doesn't have triggers,
No, that'll have no effect. The question there is, does no trigger help? No trigger doesn't help except for data load when you don't want your triggers to fire. If you don't have triggers, nothing happens. All right, I got zeros. I got to let you all go. Have a lot of fun tonight. Thank you so much for coming out.